Just a reminder that I'm going to be doing a live stream State of the Vlog address this Sunday, November 9, 4 p.m. PST, 7 p.m. EST. Alright, hello. So, in today's video I'm going to be trying to basically just restate the video that I made 1 week ago today, coming at the end of a week of trying to develop an idea, an understanding of what criticism really means in a more abstract and kind of universal sense, what it is that unites critics as varied as Immanuel Kant, Karl Marx, and Roger Ebert, and other kind of popular media film critics that we see today, and also trying to synthesize an understanding of formalism and sociological methods of doing criticism in general. And I'm going to, just to kind of take a bit of the pressure off myself, and also because I think that it will make for a video that is easier to understand, I'm going to try to just formulate this as like a series of questions. I'm talking about like research that I'm doing. This is like a methodology that I'm trying to develop for myself as a critic. I'm trying to, these are questions that I'm asking myself that I have not answered, that I have not resolved. So I think it'll be easier if I just formulate them as questions. So as I said in another video, like one of the big questions that I really wonder a lot about is, why someone like Georg Lukacs and a contemporary of his, a friend of his for a while at least, Mikhail Lifshitz, as well as many other Soviet critics, communist critics of the period of actually existing socialism in Russia, why did they say that? Why did they believe that modernism, modern art, which is like an art, you can't even really call it a movement. It's like an epochal, like condition almost. But why did they believe that modern art was bourgeois and in some way counter-revolutionary or like not communist? And I think I have a pretty decent understanding of this. It's because modernism is generally understood. There are many ways of defining it, but one way that Lifshitz defined it is kind of like going into the individual. It's really the individual inventing a kind of language for themselves. That's what formalism is. Like there are formal movements like abstract expressionism, for example, but it's really like the vocabulary of abstract expressionism, the language in which these paintings are expressed, is essentially individualistic, which is obviously not communist. So a parallel kind of question to that is like, why did they believe that realism is more communist? Why were they, such proponents of realism? They were both, behind the Iron Curtain in Soviet Russia. I mean, Lukacs lived in Hungary for a long time, and Lifshitz was mostly in Russia, but they were both, part of the Soviet Empire. And they were both, like, obviously very free thinkers, and, like, they spent a lot of time engaging with like Western Marxism, so they're not obviously like blind ideologues. They're not blind to Stalinism, which during the period of Stalinism had socialist realism as like the official state aesthetic. So why did they support it even while being critical of it, of Stalinism more generally? what is it about realism that is, so great? Why is it so communist? Again, I have like a, preliminary answer to this. It's because, it has to do with like their situatedness within communism. They were trying to, like the idea of socialist realism is really to imagine the communist utopia of the future, but in the present. Like they're trying to build communism in the present. It would like they had a very unique advantage over us who are condemned to live within bourgeois imperialism, in that they could actually they didn't have to like put off imagining like the communist utopia to the future. They didn't have to like postpone like speculating in real terms what that utopia would look like. They could do it in the present, and that's what socialist realism is all about. It's about constructing communist utopia in the present. So that's one question. Another, I mean, and then obviously like the flip side of this is, why did people like Adorno, and Brecht is another example, Bertolt Brecht, the great playwright and critic and aesthetic philosopher, why did they put so much stock in modernism? Why did they think that realism was reactionary or like a thing of the past, really? And why did they believe, like Adorno believed very emphatically, that modernism was the way of the future, was the way to do art? And Brecht as well, he like he was more of an artist than a theoretician or a philosopher, but he innovated a lot of modernist techniques, like the epic theater is like a great example of modernism. And again, this has to do, I think I have like a preliminary kind of answer to this, but it has to do with, again, their situatedness outside of actually existing socialism. And I think that it has to do with like modernism as like encapsulating or being better able to reflect like modern capitalism, and their belief that the function of art is in some way to exist in some kind of like dialectical relationship with society more generally. So their whole thing was that you make modern art in modern capitalism, in the more modern bourgeois states, in order to like, because like the job of art is to have some kind of critical relationship with society more generally, and that is like where it gets its social import. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that though, because or at least I think there's more to it, because like in aesthetic theory, Adorno doesn't just like say socialism is fine or socialist realism is fine for socialists to do. He's like critical of it, and he's very critical of Lukacs as well. And I believe, like, I really need to read that book again, but I'm pretty sure that he calls socialist realism, or like Lukacs's emphasis on realism, like reactionary in some way. He's critical of it. He really wants to say that modernism is like good and special in some kind of special way. What else do I have here? So I guess like this all has to do with my interest in like, I am a writer. I want to write, fiction. I consider myself an artist primarily, but I also want to do like criticism as well. I've written some, and I have like many essays ongoing. I've been really distracted. I'm writing a novel right now, blah, blah, blah. But I'm interested in developing a critical methodology, something where I can, do criticism, like the kind of criticism that Roger Ebert does. I mean, ideally at like a higher level, but like that kind of popular criticism where I look at, contemporary cultural objects like exhibitions or, films, books, whatever it is. And, I want to have some way of assessing whether or not these things that I'm going to be looking at are communist, are reactionary, and not just in terms of like their sociological relations to social forces, I don't want to just say that like all Hollywood films are reactionary because they're made within bourgeois capitalism and, you know, reflects a bourgeois ideology, and they're like trapped within that, and they can't really meaningfully escape their own prison. I mean, that's something that I kind of believe, but I want to be able to look at formal elements of artworks. This is why I really put like a lot of emphasis personally on understanding formalism and like practicing doing formal analyses. But I really want to be able to look at the formal elements of artworks and be able to determine whether or not the work is reactionary or utopian in a positive sense, in a communist sense. But just in terms of the formal aspects of the work, I want to, I mean, I don't even know if that's possible. Like, I really don't. That might be like complete folly, and I might just come to, but I want to come to an understanding of why that might be folly. I really want to emphasize the aesthetic qualities of work. I want to have a better understanding of aesthetics and like how aesthetics and style and form relate to politics and to society, and how, you know, these things like reflect a future. I also want to like another question that I have here is why did Terry Eagleton say that, you know, Walter Benjamin did a revolutionary criticism? Obviously, as a communist and as somebody who wants to do criticism, that's where I think my strength lies, is in writing and doing criticism of that sort. I want to be able to do a revolutionary criticism. I mean, I think I've spoken about this before, but the need to like build consciousness, and I think, you know, criticism is very important in that regard. It's through doing criticism of like popular things that, and like exposing what is reactionary about them, what is progressive about them, that I hope to like have an influence on people's minds and like builds class consciousness and an understanding of the revolution that needs to happen. I mean, I think that like consciousness building and consciousness raising is very important for a revolutionary process. Obviously, I think it's limited. I think people like Eagleton, at least in his heyday, like in the 70s, around the birth of postmodernism, there was like this whole movement of critics who really believed that like consciousness and just attaining right consciousness was the way to do a revolution. And if you could just like get the entire working class to like think in the right way, then that's all you really need to do in order to attain revolution. Perhaps, likely, Eagleton's views have changed since then, and he's come around to like acknowledging that you also need to build structures, organizations, a revolutionary party. But obviously, I think that building consciousness is very important as well. The two things go together. I mean, like, consciousness is subordinate to building a party, but whatever. Anyway, so I want to like develop a revolutionary critical practice that emphasizes the formal qualities of artworks and is able to relate aesthetics as like an institution, as a way of reasoning to society, rather than just looking at like a particular artist or a particular work or a particular movement, even a tendency, and seeing how it is informed by, you know, social forces. I want to, you know, be forward looking and do theory rather than just being backward looking and doing history, which I think is very important. Like, a lot of these social history of art historians have been very influential to me. I've learned a lot about, you know, just history from people like T.J. Clark and Michael Baxendall, but I've also, and John Barrell and like a bunch of other people, but I've also learned a lot about method from them. And, you know, like how, and obviously everybody knows that like studying history is very important for understanding the present, but I also want to like look to the future. Anyway, again, reminder, this Sunday, I'm going to try to put a video tomorrow if I have time, but this Sunday I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to interact with some of you on direct. And yeah, I'll see you then or before then.